Market, common market.
I'm doing a film about my nightmares as I'm dreaming them. In order for the movie to continue, it was dependent on me having more nightmares. Well, fortunately, I did.
I'm a little frightened by what Wes may have tapped into. I frankly felt that it was over when we did the final nightmare.
Too intelligent. That's what came to mind when I researched Wes Craven's New Nightmare for this analysis. This reboot/sequel was ahead of its time. It's so cleverly written that the final product went over, way over, audiences' heads when it was released in 1994. Sure, viewers could understand that it was a metatextual story about the original entry and the critique about the horror genre's effects on viewers, but audiences in general didn't respect it enough for the film to be successful. It was on another level of metafiction though, and I think that acted as a double-edged sword. And only 2 years later, with the release of the self-aware juggernaut Scream, audiences came out in droves to enjoy Craven's next attempt at metafiction.
But this is life. This isn't a movie.
Sure it is, Sid. It's all a movie. It's all one great big movie.
In a big way, the Scream franchise, but especially the first movie, owes its very existence to New Nightmare. However, whereas the Scream movies found success using its self-awareness, the Elm Street series has never recovered. And that's a big problem that deserves investigating.
There was no movie. There was only her life.
My name is Mo, and I want to discuss why New Nightmare has destroyed and will continue to destroy all future attempts to make any new Elm Street stories that are intended to act as a standalone film, and their ability to generate successful sequels. But while meta certainly can be good at times, there's a risk of oversaturation that can sometimes subtract from the novelty of a story. We see this problem in New Nightmare. Scream, however, handled its metafiction perfectly. For all of Scream's meta glory, it is, in my opinion, light meta. Scream is about fictional characters in a fictional story that commonly references other films. In other words, Scream's self-awareness is made for the audience. That's what New Nightmare did differently, and to its own detriment. Its self-awareness was intended for its characters.
Heather, thanks for having the guts to play Nancy one last time. At last, Freddy's back where he belongs. Regards, Wes.
While Scream took the safe route, used light meta, earned itself a flourishing franchise with many sequels, and will likely be rebooted countless times in the future for upcoming generations, the Elm Street series has fallen. Why is that? Is the amount of meta used in New Nightmare really to fully blame for the series being incapable of reviving? Or could it be something else? Well, some may point to Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare for the demise of the Elm Street series. Freddy's Dead was the intended finale to the franchise as a proper slasher series. Any success had dried up back then, so New Line Cinema decided to just end the Elm Street movies.
And now, that's over.
The 2010 reboot tried to bring Freddy back and failed miserably. Studios have been discussing the future of Freddy for a while now, but nothing's happened. The slasher genre isn't as popular as it was in the 80s, but there's still a market for it. What is it about the Elm Street movies that, as popular as they once were, cannot be rebooted now? Scream came back, Halloween came back, even Child's Play came back, but not Freddy. Well, there are two issues in my opinion that are the cause of this.
Please, God.
This is God.
The main problem, I argue, is because of New Nightmare itself. The film was a reboot and a sequel. One of those Requel abominations we see a lot of these days, where legacy characters return after a long time jump to once again engage in a similar plot. It's done as a total cash grab and nothing more. Studios know that gambling their money on a new cast within an already existing IP is likely to fail, so they bring back a familiar face that will hopefully appeal to viewers. If audiences react positively to the Requel, and enough sales turn out a decent profit, then further sequels might be made. But back in the mid-90s, Requels were not a popular thing. It wasn't expected like it is now to reignite a dead franchise, so when audiences saw Heather Langenkamp in the film, who was not playing Nancy, but a quasi-version of herself, it confused viewers instead of drawing them in. Add to that a heavy meta script that nobody has ever experienced before, and it's a recipe for failure. New Line Cinema must have realized they boxed the Elm Street franchise in with Freddy's Dead and A New Nightmare. They knew what they were doing. Freddy has been killed off in fiction and metafiction. Both films destroyed the series because it blocked every angle for Freddy to return. And I think even the titles themselves are problematic, which is issue number 2 I have. Just as Jason Goes to Hell blatantly told audiences it was the last of the Jason Voorhees character, Freddy's Dead did the same. Any attempts to resurrect these franchises have resulted in mediocre sales and critical disappointments. You can argue that 1984's Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter, marks the end of Jason's reign, only for him to return a few years later in 1986 with Jason Lives, but that's not the same thing. The Final Chapter title references the end to the series at that point, not the Jason Voorhees character. That's different. Jason returned for several more movies throughout the 80s until his personal demise in Jason Goes to Hell in 1993. That was the studio's way of announcing to the world that just as they killed off the Freddy character in 1991 with Freddy's Dead, they were doing the same to Jason. To outright state that the character dies in the title is a very bad move. There is so much influence in a title that studios don't seem to realize it. Or maybe they do realize it, but think they can just revive the dead character in its series whenever they want. Outright telling the viewers that the character officially dies and then expecting the audience to, just a few years later, accept that the character returns is not just an insult to viewers' intelligence, but gimmicky and lazy. Fans aren't stupid. They know when studios are fooling them. That's why New Line Cinema renamed Craven's sequel with New Nightmare instead of his original title, The Ascension. They needed to sell the film with Craven's name in the title and as new. It had to separate itself from the previous movies and state that it was different. Maybe if they used Freddy in the title, it would have fared better. If they ever were to make a proper sequel to New Nightmare, it must be in the same meta-universe as the real people of the franchise again. A sequel would have to include another actor or actress from the Elm Street franchise playing themselves and being haunted by Freddy, using the same heavy metatextual elements. But it can't be Heather Langenkamp. Her story was completed. It was a very risky move to make a meta story of her real-life identity in the first place. It likely wouldn't have worked a second time anyways, because critics and audiences would have seen through the meta gimmick. New Nightmare actually set up Dylan for the sequel. He partakes in killing Freddy in the final moments, stabbing the tongue and shutting the doors to the furnace so Freddy will burn. Heather could have stabbed him and hurt Freddy all she wanted, but it wouldn't have ended him in the story. It needed Dylan's involvement, and because of that, Dylan becomes responsible for Freddy's death. It would make him involved in a possible sequel as a major character, like Heather. But the problem is that Dylan is a fictional character. He's not really related to Heather. So any continuation with Dylan would have been a reduced form from a metafiction universe to a fictional reality. I think regardless of whether New Nightmare was successful or not, Craven and New Line Cinema had zero intentions of continuing the Elm Street series. They all went into New Nightmare knowing it was the end of Freddy. As critically acclaimed and intelligent as the movie is to this day, I can't help but feel that it was, in a way, just a final cash grab that exploits the Freddy character for one last go-around. But it failed because viewers weren't ready for that extreme level of meta. Besides, New Nightmare was more of a personal project for Craven himself than it was a story done with any intentions to continue or develop a new Elm Street series. And it needs to be addressed that Craven never saw his original Elm Street as a franchise. He wasn't involved in Part 2 at all. He returned to co-write Part 3 though. And Craven wanted to use a self-aware theme for Dream Warriors, but was overruled by the studio. So even back in 1987, Craven was thinking about ending the Elm Street franchise with a meta story. He had no plans whatsoever for Freddy to go on. But Craven didn't treat Scream that way. He directed 4 films in the Scream franchise. So what was his issue with Elm Street? Well, I think Elm Street was a deeply personal story to Craven. He incorporated elements of his childhood and his mother into the original story. So I think to further the series was to, in a way, maybe disrespect his family. I don't know, I'm just speculating, but there is a reason why he chose Scream over Elm Street to continue as a series. We'll never know though. His sudden passing in 2015 left the horror community devastated. He created two of the best horror icons ever, and he raised the bar very high for other writer-directors. So be happy about what you have, I say. You've got 8 movies and a TV series with the great Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. It's one of the best horror movie franchises in the world. I mean, who knows though? Maybe there is a way for the Elm Street series to be revived again. Maybe not enough time has passed. Maybe the franchise needs another creative genius like Wes Craven to take control. Only time will tell. But until then, I'm satisfied and grateful for the iconic films we have. Let me know what you think. Should the Elm Street series stay dead, or should it be revived? Can it be revived? For more film criticism, don't forget to like and subscribe to Subtextual Archives. And check out the links below. Take care.
Is Freddy really dead?
Of course he is. Freddy's dead and gone.